Hi, everyone. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is royal editor for The Times, Kate Mansey and Talk Radio's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Thank you so much for being here. Kate, I saw you with the Princess of Wales today. How gorgeous did she look? And can you tell me about that appearance?
Well, this was another big solo day, wasn't it, for the Princess of Wales? We've seen this gradual return to duties. But here she was in Wales, fittingly, for the Princess of Wales, visiting a hospice, which actually was first supported by Princess Diana. Even before the hospice was built, Princess Diana started the fundraising for this. So it was really nice touches. After Diana died, the King then took over patronage for this hospice in Wales near Cardiff. And today it was announced that Kate is the new patron. And she looks like she's back in her element, really enjoying getting down, kneeling down, meeting some of the children that are being helped by the hospice, some of them whom have life-threatening conditions, frankly. And the parents, the families who were all supported there, it was like she'd never been away.
It is so sweet to watch the way she engages with people. And I wonder if the people that are there are more emotional about it, knowing that she had such a tough year last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's certainly an empathy, isn't there, that's always been there with the Princess of Wales and her work. But now there's a whole new layer to that. So when she returned, the kind of big comeback was her going to the Royal Marsden Hospital, where it emerged that that's where she had had her chemotherapy treatment. And she was speaking very much not as a princess to the other patients there, but as someone who's been there and has been through it. Fortunately, she's never been through the situation some of those families have with having a very, very poorly child, and no one wants to imagine that's so awful. But through this work, she can support them. And actually, the palace are reminding everybody that actually this is where her work started. So when she first joined the royal family, her very first patronage was for the East Anglia's Children Hospice, which, as Duchess of Cambridge, as she was sort of her patch. Now she's doing the same as Princess of Wales at a hospice in Wales, very fittingly. But the sort of that thread through her work continues again with the early years, looking at small children, how you protect small children, how you support them and their families. So it's interesting to see it all coming together years later.
It is so beautiful. And Rupert, you were with her other half last night. I saw a very lively video of you on Instagram losing your mind over Aston Villa. Do you think Prince William shared in your enthusiasm?
I think he did not quite like I did on Instagram, but we did see plenty of pictures. He's having to say to his wife quite a lot at the moment, I'm off to the football, because last week he did a public engagement and then nipped down to Monaco, where Aston Villa played very poorly in losing 1-0 in the penultimate round in the European Champions League qualifying stage. And then last night, he was at Villa Park to watch us win 4-2. It was an emotional night, but it was actually, looking at the context, Celtic fans have a history of anti-royal sentiment and have said some pretty nasty things over the time. And there were one or two banners at the ground sort of going back to their Catholic and Irish Republican roots. And there was a sort of undercurrent there last night, but ultimately his team won. He was ecstatic. But obviously, he had to say once again to the wife, I'm not home for dinner again because I need to go and watch my team playing football, which sounds like a conversation being held across the length and breadth of the land. But it is good to see that not only he's going to the football, but sort of backing up what Kate has said. It's really good to see the Princess of Wales actually going out to things that she feels so comfortable and able to be natural at. Yes, she's got all the empathy now that she is a cancer recoverer. But then last week we saw her at the Holocaust memorials, again offering that soft, gentle touch. And I think that's what's really coming through, that she's managing her return and rehabilitating herself very much on her terms. I'm not sure whether Kate saw her making a sock today, which I believe she was at a factory, but in a second visit on the day. But what it does show is that she is keen to be back on the road and feeling and it looks normal. Kate will obviously have seen her much more in person than I have, but I have to say, I think she looks incredibly happy to be back out on the road.
Hey, do you agree that Catherine looked comfortable and happy to be where she was?
Absolutely. I think when I first saw her after her therapy, when she went to Westminster Abbey in December for her carol concert, and actually when she arrived, looked slightly nervous. We're not seeing any of that anymore. She's really kind of back, she feels like she's getting her feet back now. Kensington Palace, very, very keen every time we see the Princess of Wales to stress it's a gradual return. It's about the new normal. It's not about going back to full-time duties and wearing herself out. This is very much a kind of staged progression. But I'd agree with Rupert, that she looks great. She looks well, she looks happy. And it's this kind of reassuring message, isn't it, from the royal family, that she seems to be, by all accounts, making a kind of a slow but steady return, which is great to see.
I am so I'll just say dumb when it comes to what next steps are, Rupert. So if we are looking for potential Prince William sightings when it comes to Aston Villa, what are next steps?
The next step may be in March, but you never know because half term comes up and he might want to take George to the football. But it is something that he is president of the FA. But what is good is to see, obviously we saw him in the pub in Birmingham as well recently, having a pint with Villa fans who are on their way to a game. So it is not just a sort of, he's genuine about it. So hopefully we will see him at Villa Park. It's quite, let's be honest, security has to be upped. And it's not straightforward for him to go to a football match because that he's in a hospitality area, so the security people are always going to be anxious, particularly at a football match that had a sort of undercurrent like last night. But as we saw from the pictures, and Kate knows that this is not just faking his football fandom. He is a genuine Aston Villa fan, has been since his early teens, and it's really good to see him actually looking as if he's able to unwind. And I think it might also come back the feeling that he can go and do this, in that he's not so worried now about where his wife is at the moment, knowing that within the family context, things are much more back to the new normal that enables the Princess of Wales to get back on the road again.
Kate, we're talking about this comfort that we're seeing from the Prince and Princess of Wales after a tough year and almost a confidence. And there was such a sweet moment this week where Prince William was visiting the NatureMetrics research lab. And he asked the lab if they could use DNA or eDNA from water they collected to answer, the Loch Ness Monster mystery. And so they're explaining how they go through this process. And he jokes, does that mean you can find the Loch Ness Monster? Now, Dr. Cat Bruce claimed, we actually think that's just a very big eel. And then there was another sweet moment where they were squirting water and somebody suggested they squirt it towards the journalist, and Prince William says something like, this is the best day of my life. I am constantly surprised at how funny he is. And perhaps it's because we have been through so much pain. I mean, Harry and Meghan drama aside, there's been so much loss in this family over the last 5 years between the death of the Queen and Prince Philip. Do you really feel like those moments help describe or define who he is behind the scenes? Does he have this great sense of humor? Is he as off the cuff witty as we sometimes get to enjoy?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I've had some private meetings with William sort of away from the cameras, and he's genuinely funny. He's genuinely a caring guy. It's interesting you're seeing that because it's exactly what I think is playing out here as well. Kate's talked about the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're actually seeing that through the fact that he can relax more, that he can go out to the football, not worry perhaps so much anymore, because this has taken a toll on him. When I was out in South Africa with him for the Earthshot Prize in November, he was saying, this has been probably the worst year in my life, probably the hardest year in my life, is what he said. It's been brutal, it's been dreadful. And actually, that has obviously taken its toll. You know, Kate's illness has taken its toll on William, like it would with any husband whose wife had gone through that. But we are seeing this. I think it's always been there with William. I think he's always had this kind of lighter touch about him, but he's had the burden of responsibility of being the heir to the throne, you know, being the eldest son. And has worn it quite heavily. I think now everything he's gone through, it's kind of knocked some of the edges off him, and he's much more open. You know, we're not seeing him talk through Kensington Palace spokespeople. When he talks himself. You know, they're both of them much more open. And you know, when you've been through something, like you say, you've been through all that loss in your life, you know, not least talking about when he was 15, when he lost his mother, and then to have to go through everything he's gone through. I think we're seeing a new William. I think he's coming out of his shell. I think he's letting the world see what was always there, this witty, you know, warm and genuinely kind of happy kind of guy.
My favorite Prince William moment is when he's standing there. I'm so sorry, I can't remember where they were, but he's standing there for that group picture and he asks who pinched his bum. And you see Catherine like light up, like, I can't believe he just said that. But I just love those moments. Now, Rupert, are you familiar with this next story, or would you like for me to tell it about the fake sniper and this five-a-side? Because I love this story.
Yeah, well, it's actually, okay, it's from a podcast. But actually, when you're talking about William, this podcast reflects his sort of humor, because he's talking to Peter Crouch, and people who don't know, he's a very tall, famous ex-footballer. He's a bit of a social media darling, one or two other people. But he's talking about how when he was playing football, he was always a marked man. Look, and I know that, you know, if you're going to be a member of the royal family, the opposition team are going to want to get you. I can vouch for that, because I used to play rugby with a member of the royal family, and they definitely wanted it. And I used to play second row with that aforementioned member of the royal family, and I was permanently being taken out because they wanted to get the member of the royal family. So what I'm saying is, when he played football at school, any opposition is saying, right, let's see if we can give the future king a right kicking. And so what he did is he turned around to his security guard in this story he alludes to, and says, and gets them to say, fire a laser at him and say, you're a marked man, don't do that again, which actually once again shows his sort of awareness. And obviously, though, then 10 minutes later, I think the story says he was absolutely clobbered again, so it didn't really have the effect that he wanted. But I think it does really reflect that what I'm seeing now, that was a few years ago, but we've seen him appear and he was actually having one pint. Remember in that podcast when I think Mike Tyndall referred to him as one pint Willie? So he was drinking and nursing this pint during this podcast. But I actually think this, able to sort of look as if he's a genuine football fan, or he's joking with the press, means the self-confidence is there to not worry that I'm the future king and I've got to mind my P's and Q's. He actually says, right, the way I'm going to engage with my fellow citizens is to look normal and not suddenly be behind an ivory tower, just look like a genuine human being who is able, as a result, to connect with whoever he's going to be meeting. Of course, he lives in this gilded life, but actually when he steps out of it, he does give the impression that he's completely normal. The only thing is, presumably, he wished he'd asked the people today, please find the Loch Ness Monster, just to make sure the Scottish tourist trade continues to have a boost with people coming to search for the aforementioned Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, I will just pretend that I haven't been told it's a giant eel now. But yeah, you're exactly right. Speaking of lasers, there is a story circulating in the States about how there's a little bit of disappointment surrounding the upcoming Invictus Games because they've replaced rifles with lasers. This is according to the New York Post. Now, they say Prince Harry has replaced rifles with lasers. And I'm assuming that Prince Harry is not the person that made that decision, full stop. This is going to happen in Vancouver, Canada, February 8th through the 15th. They decided to ditch rifles. And apparently some people have criticized that because laser beams will hinder their performance. A spokesperson for the Invictus Foundation claimed that the change was made due to inclusivity. I mean, to what extent, Kate, does Prince Harry have input in something like that? I feel like, not, I'm willing to criticize when I feel like there's something to criticize, but this feels like it's something out of his control.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's always known, isn't it, as Prince Harry's Invictus Games, and rightly so, because he's the founder. He's the guy who had the dream, the initiative. I was with him in Colorado at the Warrior Games, which the US Army does, a very similar sort of Paralympic style event for wounded servicemen and women. And it was there, he said, we should do this in the UK. We should do this all around the world. And thank goodness to Harry, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He came back, he made it happen. So all credit to him. But now it is such a big thing. There's boards and executives and all sorts of things that, the sporting element of it, I don't think we can pin this on Harry as his decision. Perhaps he was aware of it. It does seem slightly strange for people who served in the military to then go on and decide they're going to shoot with lasers. But presumably there was a good reason behind it. But no, I think there's some sympathy with Harry, because everyone wants to have a pop, don't they, all the time with Harry. And like you say, I'm happy to criticize where I think it's justified. But unless we know that it was actually him that said, came up with the idea, which I very much doubt. This is a guy who did 2 tours of Afghanistan, and he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to the military. He has fired a few weapons himself. So I don't think he will be shying away from live ammunition as such.
Yeah, Rupert, do you understand the change? As somebody that does not really like guns, I have no idea what this is about. Can you explain it to someone like me?
Well, basically, it's biathlon. Like, I'm an ex-military man, so I know what's going on here. So, I was not very good. I was never going to win a biathlon competition because my shooting was not particularly good. But anyway, that aside, I can see basically it's cross-country skiing. The idea, and then what you do as part of the test, you come up and you fire a rifle. So it's got a very much a military meaning to what this competition. You see it in the Olympics as well. But obviously, I think there is a practical consideration to have lasers. It's probably easier to stage, because when you're firing live ammunition, it creates its own kind of problem. So I can see the practical suggestions. Some people who are criticizing it, saying, well, what sites will get damaged by, the snow and affect the quality of the laser shooting. But the organizers have said, we will make sure that every laser gun, when the competitor is there to compete, will be fit for purpose. So I think it seems an entirely sensible, practical decision in the staging of the event, the way that you can make it safer, probably. They also say it tries to make it more inclusive, because there will be some people who actually firing a gun may be very difficult, because you've got to remember, some of these competitors are recovering from some very serious injuries. And so they want to feel that they can compete as much as a level playing field as is possible. So look, I think Kate and you probably think as well, everybody is saying Harry has done this and Harry's made his mistake here. No, let's see. The proof in the pudding will be how successful will this Invictus Games be. We all want it to be a success, because at the heart of it, there is a fabulous incentive for wounded servicemen and women to help their recovery by giving them some objective which might be competing for their country on a global stage in these games, because we will see some horrendous, people with really difficult injuries battling against the odds. And so, I think we all wish it well and have seen it flourish, and hopefully in Canada it will flourish again.
Now, we've all been like, everyone's so hard on Harry, but let's talk about the Vanity Fair article for a second. We won't go into all of the crazy details, and I know I listed a lot in the sheet that I sent you, but talk to me about what stood out to you. Kate, I know you've probably had to talk about this for the last 2 weeks and you're exhausted from it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what from the Vanity Fair piece stood out to you. And were you shocked at all by it? Were you like, oh my goodness, I didn't see this coming? Because we have, coming from Meghan's camp, we have been led to believe that this is Meghan Markle's year. And there have been a couple of hiccups, and we're only basically a month in.
Yeah, I mean, I read that when it dropped, as soon as it dropped on the kind of Friday night UK time, and my jaw hit the ground because this is a publication that has so far been mostly very, very supportive of the Sussexes. You'll remember they had the Mad About Harry front cover, which had access to Meghan. She did that big shoot, and it was very glamorous. And then they had a piece a little while after that saying how nasty the British press had been to Meghan and Harry. So for this kind of style, Bible, which very held in very high regard here in the UK as well as over in the US, to be so critical of them, it really was a kind of takedown of their business achievements. And I read through it, and I was really interested. And to see, I wondered what would be the pinch point for them, what they would be most concerned about. And it was, I think, one of the things that annoyed them quite a lot was about that they were bad neighbours, that they'd brought the kind of their neighbourhood into disgrace with all this kind of celebrity that they've brought to the area. And I kind of thought, hang on a minute, Montecito, there's tons of celebrities there. The idea that Meghan and Harry could move in and bring a spotlight to the area that already has so many A-list celebrities seemed a little bit odd. And another thing I think that will get to them is any criticism of how they are with their staff, which again was the big issue in the palace. We had the email, didn't we, from Jason Nauf, in which he criticised Meghan's behaviour while she was at the palace in an email to his superiors. And that really was, very damaging, I think, for Meghan and Harry, very upsetting for them and distressing. So they won't want this. This is terrible timing, as you say. This is Meghan's year. We saw her running across the beach on New Year's Day, writing 2025 in the sand. This new start for her, carefree, barefoot on the beach. She's about to release her With Love, Meghan, this big lifestyle project for Netflix, already been delayed through no fault of her own, through the fires, sadly, in Los Angeles. So it was a wrong time for them as a couple. It'd be interesting to see how they react, if they react to it as well. So I was interested from a royal commentator perspective, but also from a media commentator perspective. Is this a sign, and perhaps you can tell me, because you're sitting over in the States, of whether the US has fallen out of love with Harry and Meghan? I'm not sure.
Well, when you mentioned her Netflix show being displayed, I don't know if you've seen the headlines, but last night there was an event for Netflix, kind of their big kickoff of the new season and the new year. And John Maloney, who's a very popular comedian here, has a new talk show. And he got up and, kind of roasted Harry and Meghan about how Netflix hasn't given somebody such a large sum of money with no plans since Harry and Meghan. And I just he's not the first Netflix, somebody with a Netflix project to criticize Harry and Meghan on Netflix. We saw the same with Joe Rogan. We saw the same with Chris Rock. In some of their specials, they've taken a swipe at Harry and Meghan. And I would assume that under my own network, I'd be in a safe space. But we saw the same thing with Bill Simmons and Spotify too. So I do feel like it's open season on them. And I wonder if it's because of how silly everything got with the release of Spare. All of a sudden, Kimmel's joking about you. Every late night talk show's having a pop at you, and it just has become the norm. So I do think that we're not as enchanted with them as we were when they first moved here. We thought, oh my goodness, we have our own. We have Prince Harry, Princess Diana's son, he's here. And now I think we're just waiting for the next complaint. What are they upset about today? Rupert, you had some thoughts on Meghan's upcoming show and the gardening scenario. You are an expert gardener, but tell me really quickly what you thought about the Vanity Fair piece when you read it, and what was your biggest takeaway?
Given what we know, it actually seemed to just solidify what is going on. We know that they give the impression of being extremely loved up. That's what the article refers to them, that actually Harry is extremely protective of Meghan. We probably know all that, and that's been all part of the history. He's been always trying to say Meghan comes first, and the article still reflects that. But ultimately, it didn't paint them in a big. When I read it, I was on holiday. Poor old Kate obviously had a weekend completely ruined because Friday night is not a good time for a story to drop. So I'm sorry, Kate, that particular weekend you had to change your plans. But for most people, you think, well, in terms of Harry and Meghan, it just felt fairly normal in the terms of what we would expect. Now, the odd takeaway about has she been hawking a book for a potential post-divorce scenario? I don't know whether she has, but you hope she wouldn't have been. But if that's something Vanity Fair have actually researched and feel that they can justify saying that, then you have to say, is there some truth in that speculation, as it were? So they have started 2025 in a very difficult vein. They had obviously hoped with this documentary, this series, for Meghan to suddenly be shown in a new light. The Polo documentary, I don't think, was a rip-roaring success. But it is quite easy for comedians to have a pop at Meghan and Harry. It's a bit like most comedians always seem to have a President Trump joke up their sleeve. You know, it's easy pickings for a comedian. And maybe Harry and Meghan, sadly for them, are in that category that every comedian can resort to a cheap jibe against Harry and Meghan.
Well, before I let you go, you've got to tell us about your theory about Meghan Markle's fingernails.
Well, I just wonder, Kate may know more about it. Those hands don't look like they do much gardening. So what I want to know is how much time is she spending out there growing her own vegetables? Because I know I'm already thinking, I've just had my new greenhouse delivered. I'm getting ready for the new season and I will be out there with my wife planting and watering. I just think she lives in this Montecito void. How much, and this is what the series has got to get over, will it look like real life, what most couples, what most families are going through? Or is it going to be a wonderfully sanitized version? You know, when did Meghan last put on the washing? You know, do they have people to cook their meals? You know, she says she does it all, but looking at their lifestyle, I think it's a pretty difficult one to be able to manage on a day-to-day basis. So if she's talking about gardening, rearing the chickens and cooking, how much time is she actually doing? If it looks for real, bearing in mind it's not recorded at their house, you know there's a big production staff behind it making it look perfect. I'm ready to be proved wrong, but that's my takeaway on what I expect to see.
Yeah. Before you respond to that, I just want to say this to you too. Like, there's been a big debate over in the States. There's an entrepreneur and reality star named Bethany Frankel, who's done this entire series about how, you know, expensive the luxury lifestyle is out. It's okay to have the Walmart Birkin, is what she was talking about. And based on what Rupert was saying, you know, the glossy Instagram feed, just, you know, the logo, that world is over. It's all about being raw and talking on your phone in your pajamas. Is Meghan's style that would have excelled 10 years ago? She would have dominated 10 years ago. Is that still what people want today? Or do they want more attainable and real and raw?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, and it comes up, doesn't it, in the Vanity Fair article, that someone saying that it feels very 2010.
Yeah.
Is sort of, ouch, you know, has she missed the boat? Because have we all moved on? And that, you know, Rupert's got a very good point. You know, it's not filmed at their house, and it's this constant phrase that we are always told in kind of PR and marketing and media management about being authentic. You know, how authentic can you be when you're presenting all the stuff? When you're a duchess, are you really cooking for your family yourself? You know, do you have maids to do it for you? And when it's not really your house, how much are we tuning into? You want to tune in and buy into their lifestyle. It doesn't bother me that it's aspirational. You know, I like to look at people's fabulous kitchens and how they live their lives. I like anybody does. But I think this idea of whether it's authentic may be the point at which it lives or dies, and whether it's successful or not, which brings us actually back to our discussion about Prince William, right? Because in being more open, he's being more authentic. Like, he's got the 2025 memo, you know, that this is how we're living our lives now. You can have a joke, you know, why not have a pint of cider in a Wetherspoons pub, which is the cheapest pub in Britain, you know, cheapest pub chain we have here, with a few blokes who are going to go to the football. And that doesn't seem contrived to me, because he knows what he's talking about. He does love the football. He can talk about the transfers. Most of it, he would rather it took place away from the cameras. He's not always doing it for show. So I think, you're seeing that from, don't want to pit them against each other too much, but one can't help but wonder whether they could take a leaf out of Kate Williamsburg and do the kind of authentic thing. But it does involve being more vulnerable. You have to open up. You have to be a bit more kind of warts and all. But that's the kind of world, like you say, on your phones, the Instagram influencers who are doing really well are showing the kind of behind the scenes stuff a bit more.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Obviously, we prefer when you agree with us. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Kate, Rupert, you guys are both so much fun. Within the last 48 hours, you've actually been around royals. That is very impressive. Does my audience realize how this is great content?
Can I just say though, yeah. William won't be happy if we sell Ollie Watkins. That's all I'll say.
Okay, well, if he's watching, if whoever makes that decision is watching, now they know. Okay, all right. Well, thanks everyone. We'll see you again next time.